Hello. In this video, I went over quite a few things. So it's more of a little vlog idea that you can maybe put in the background of something you're doing. But the gist is that we're having a very fiery weekend with the moon in Sagittarius, a lot of creative opportunity, but the core is really that you are returning to a sense of home within yourself in every breath and every moment, not allowing yourself to be whipped around. And a way to actually engage that in the world is through your family, whether that's chosen or real family. It is that real feeling of unconditional love that I think we only access from family. Of course, not everyone has that experience in family, but think of anything that you unconditionally love. Maybe it's a pet, and allow it to ripple back into yourself. Allow that unconditional love to ripple back into yourself because ultimately, this Sag moon is about the Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter in Cancer is about abundant emotional wisdom, and emotional wisdom is care. So, care for yourself, care for your joy this weekend as we prepare for the full moon in Capricorn. I touch on that a little bit in this video, but I will be making another early next week to pinpoint that a little bit more. Probably less of a vlog style than this one. So let me know what you think. Have a lovely weekend. Hello, how are you? What's going on? How was the last 3 days of this crazy Scorpio moon transit? And what are you looking forward to this weekend now that the moon is in Sagittarius, a much more optimistic sign? So, before I go into the Sagittarius elements here, I want to return each and every one of us to this inner core that is unshakable. And I think many people, including myself, get really pushed to an edge at the Scorpio moon times. This Scorpio moon, it was nice because it made a trine to the sun and it, you know, ended up making a trine to Mercury and Jupiter as well. So there is absolutely an opportunity that we were able to access in the last few days, but it was a pretty dark opportunity. And so thank God now the moon has moved into Sagittarius. But before we get whipped up in how the planets are affecting us, it's more important than ever to go into your core and to realize that you are not at the whim of these planets. You simply aren't. And that's because you are way too much bigger than all of it. You are love, and your only job here is to forgive yourself and to love yourself. And ooh, oh, oh my goodness, right? Like nothing other than that is important. Okay? That's a fundamental piece. And so it's a naturally optimistic storyline that we get moving from a Scorpio moon time into a Sagittarius moon time. And the optimism is truly just because we move from a Pluto rulership to a Jupiter rulership, which means we move to the rulership of like recognizing our mortality and moving into our own wisdom. So we're moving into this whole weekend. This whole weekend is a Jupiter Sagittarius weekend. You know, today, Friday, moon is in early Sagittarius, and we're getting this trine to Neptune. And tomorrow on Saturday, moon is in mid Sagittarius, and we'll get a Grand Fire Trine, which is really nice, to Saturn and Venus's trine. And so Saturday is really a fiery opportunity. And I think we're going to be feeling it more than ever because the moon is so big and like pulsating right now because it is so full. It's becoming full. It'll be full next week on Monday. And I think there is emotional wisdom, emotional lessons that we have learned that are very clear right now that we're going to see culminate at the Capricorn full moon later next week. I'm sorry, early next week. But this weekend is really about kind of bathing in the fire, bathing in the wisdom, bathing in whatever your excitement is, whatever your joy is. And I'd put money on your excitement and joy being something deeply emotional in this time. I read that astrologically because we still have Jupiter in Cancer, which is all about our emotional life, our family life. But I think that it's a natural conclusion to make in the world that we've come to right now that we are not who we think we are. We are not our goals. We are not all of the achievements that we are here to make. We are not a mission. Everything is right here and right now. There's actually nothing that needs to be done other than self-love, other than self-forgiveness. Because once you start there, oof, you forgive those outside of you. You really inculcate peace and you're able to accept yourself for your preferences. And none of this means you get walked over because everything's equal. Accepting your preferences ultimately means accepting your boundaries and acting from there and moving yourself in accordance to what you want. Okay? So this is a really big weekend just in terms of allowing our optimism to grow despite such a calcification, such a recognition that there's an old self that is really calcified. And I see this because the full moon on Monday or Tuesday, that's in a last quarter square to Saturn. Saturn in Aries already has the effect of calcifying the self, calcifying being a Saturn word in a more negative sense, you could say. So if you're feeling restricted in who you think you are right now by way of what actions you want to be taking in the world, and if you're feeling like you can't take those actions, there's something blunting you or stopping you, it's likely because that sense of self is overly calcified and not actually weight bearing anymore. Okay? The other fun thing that happens at the end of this weekend is that Mars, which is the ruler of Saturn right now, Mars moves into Gemini. We move from having this Saturn rulership where we have to work on what we already have. Taurus, which is where it is now. Taurus is about your resources that you already presently have. Mars and Taurus wants you to work with what you have. Once Mars moves into Gemini, we are working with our mind. We are acting through our mind. There's communications that have to be made, things to write and exchange, okay? And I think there's a link there between the Gemini new moon that we had at the beginning of this cycle, which in all of my accounts was simply resetting our emotional vocabulary, like allowing ourselves to come to a new assortment of words that we use to talk about our lives. It became Cancer season pretty quickly into this new moon cycle. And so things got emotional pretty quickly. And the moon is the ultimate ruler of everything until we get to Leo season. So we're really in this wild moment. Everything's wild. I'm just saying that to be exciting. Everything's always wild, okay? But we're in this moment. And I think we are preparing to end something that we started at the Capricorn full moon. Well, whatever started was beginning of this year at the Capricorn new moon, which was in January, if you remember. The reason I'm saying we're ending it now is because, well, there's a few things going on there, but what we started in January was only meant to be temporary. That new moon was ruled by Saturn that was still balsamic to Neptune, which meant Saturn was still completing a 36-year cycle with Neptune. January wasn't the time to make a new business that was going to like pop off just yet. January was the time to start working towards the end of whatever you thought you were going to do. And now, next week is the end. But it's the type of end that doesn't just like give you a new beginning automatically. It's the type of end that you have to hold space and reflect on everything you did achieve and oof, make space for folding in more unknowable truths into your next plan. You say, I'm open to what the next thing's going to be. Okay. And so if we're looking at Capricornian things, it's really not going to be till next January with that next Capricorn new moon where we're really starting something foundational again. So that's what I wanted to say for this weekend. I hope you're doing really, really well. I really do want to hear from you about why you use astrology because it continues to be an issue for me, and I don't really know what I'm doing with it most times because it is this trap of setting goals for yourself. It is a trap of thinking that there is one ultimate language. I often think that art and creation is, dare I say, more human, more important than the study of astrology, because I think that astrology is inert and pattern reckoning on its own is somewhat soulless. However, art on its own, creative process on its own, is also not something that will answer our questions for us and give us a feeling of satisfaction. And that's, I guess, where I go back to this Cancer time that we are in right now, where why are you growing? Why are you here? What is your family like? Who do you love? Who do you want to grow with and nurture with? And the first answer to that question had better be yourself. I'm having someone over to where I live right now tomorrow, and I really was scrubbing my bathroom. And I was like, oh, I should have done this a week ago for myself, right? Why am I waiting for someone else to make it beautiful or make it presentable? Why aren't I doing that for myself first? You know? So these are the questions that I think are worth sitting with. What do you love unconditionally? What is the easiest thing to love unconditionally? And then how can you ripple that back into yourself? Because that's Cancer. Cancer is about the actual manifestation of unconditional love, whether that is from afar with someone you don't talk to anymore, but you still hold dearly in your heart. I have those people. Whether it is someone very close to you in your life, whether that close person is someone you have really no friction with or someone you have a lot of friction with, right? We have complete spectrum here of how we are able to unconditionally love someone, and it doesn't mean being walked over. Okay. Nowhere in the astrology right now, maybe that's too big of a thing to say, but community is about to become the most important thing to each and every one of us over the next 18 months once the North Node enters Aquarius and joins Pluto. And so let this be the last weekend where you think that you have to do it all on your own. And it's not about finding one person who's perfect. It's about really leaning into the intelligence of the actual community that's around you and sincerely engaging with them, sincerely engaging with the edge that you are on. And I think that that is what I'm most needing for myself as well, because I'm honestly hitting too many walls in my entrepreneurial pursuits, of which I have a few. And I think that the walls that I'm hitting are because I'm not taking feedback. I'm not involving others very much. It's very Aries South node of me. My Libra North node really wants me to evolve into a more diplomatic um, way of being, you could say. So that I think is what I want to say. Let me know if you've made it this far, if you enjoy my rambling. There is more to say, and it has to do with the end of July, which is also going to be basically pointing each of us to being in community much, 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 much more necessarily in community. But here's the thing, that Aries South node of mine doesn't uh isn't all bad because we have this Saturn in Aries right now. Also my Saturn return. If you're going through an Aries Saturn return, shout out. But Aries demands you're in the present moment. And I think the sextile to Aquarius and Pluto in Aquarius from at least Neptune also in Aries, that's really saying we have to know our personal truth in order to be in a group and be healthy and not kind of be drinking the Kool-Aid, if you will. And then, of course, the Uranus and Gemini just supercharges both how we're talking about ourselves and how we are allowing a group to transform who we think we are. So, again, this is probably the much more important part of the astrology that's going on right now than any one kind of minutia tracking thing that can happen. So I'm very curious. How's it going for you? How and why do you end up returning to this really stable inner part of you that's not being knocked around by your emotions? Because I think ultimately that's what we associate these planetary transits with. It's like, oh, I'm really feeling that transit, but that's just because you're really feeling something. And I think we need to stay there. We need to stay at the I'm really feeling this. We need to let it move through us and recognize we have this anchor within ourselves. No matter what happens on the outside, we have an anchor within ourselves that connects us to our core. And that is the truth more than anything else. Okay. So that is what I have. Yeah. Let me know how you are very sincerely. I'm thinking of bringing back my free 15-minute chats again. My only issue with that is that people will sign up and then will bail. And that's not a good feeling. So the thing is, I really do want to hear from you guys. And I know not everyone needs a reading, although you should get a reading with me if you've thought about it. But yeah, that's what I'll have right now. I hope you have a lovely, fiery weekend where you can explore anything that your heart desires. And I think, again, it's returning to this emotional truth of what is your core, what is your family, what are you able to unconditionally love? All right. So that is what I have. Bye for now.